In the beginning of the Grand Theft Auto series, players were given the option to select one of 8 different protagonists to play. Despite the varied selection of characters, they are no different in-game in terms of abilities, the only variance being the color of their clothes, hair and skin. Each character has a default first name which the player may immediately use, but can be renamed according to the player's wish. In addition to featuring characters of different appearances and backgrounds, the game is also notable for featuring both male and female protagonists to choose. The characters are illustrated in the same manner as other characters in the game, with a semi-realistic but somewhat stylized facial design. Bubba, male character. Depicted as obese and tough, with a cigar in his mouth. Suggested to be of Cuban or Hispanic descent. Divine. Female character, depicted as being of African descent. Her appearance is possibly inspired by blaxploitation heroines such as Pam Grier and Tamara Dobson. Katie. Female character. Depicted to be of Hispanic descent. Kivlov. Male character. Suggested by name to be of Slavic descent. Mickey. Female character. Depicted to be of Asian, possibly Japanese, descent. Travis. Male character. He is an homage to Travis Bickle, the main character in the movie Taxi Driver. Troy. Male character. Depicted as being of African descent. Ulrika. Female character. Suggested by name and appearance to be of Scandinavian descent. Claude Speed is a character in the Grand Theft Auto series who appears as the protagonist of Grand Theft Auto 2. Little history is given for the character in GTA 2. However, DMA Design had previously released a promotional movie for the game, which was also compiled into the opening cinematic of the game, depicting a live-action rendition of Claude Speed committing several criminal acts, similar in all Grand Theft Auto games. In the movie, Claude is seen performing jobs for several crime bosses, before being killed by an assassin sent by the Zaibatsu Corporation, whose van and merchandise were previously stolen by Claude. Close inspection of Claude Speed's rap sheet in the intro movie reveals that he is 28 during GTA 2, which is either set in 2013 or 1999. During the course of the game, Claude starts his career as a simple thug, however, he was soon hired by the major gangs that controlled Anywhere City. Claude secretly worked with all of them, and in the end managed to kill all of their leaders, and later flees the city with the money he earned. Claude goes to prison during the mission Penal Ties, on orders of Redneck's leader Billy Bob Bean. Claude Speed is a sociopathic character with little to no moral conscience of his actions. He will work for anyone who will give him the needed money or resources, and will be ready to manipulate, betray or attack anybody who is between him and his goals. Part of his bold character depicts him mocking or spitting over enemies he has killed. He also worked for various gangs simultaneously, managing to manipulate each of their leaders, turning them against each other, and, in the end, eliminating them all. He is an expert of a variety of weapons, from simple pistols to even rocket launchers. He's an avid smoker, as seen in-game, and drug user as well. Claude is a character in the Grand Theft Auto series who appears as the protagonist of Grand Theft Auto 3, and a minor character in Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas. He also appears in Grand Theft Auto Online as a parent character model. In all of his appearances, he doesn't speak, and, as such, doesn't have a voice actor. Claude is a mute criminal with an unknown background. Originally owning a garage in San Fierro, he later loses it to Carl Johnson in a race and flees to Liberty City with his new girlfriend Catalina. However, she eventually betrays him and leaves him for dead during a bank robbery, leading to his desire for revenge. He then works for various criminals and gangs in the city's underworld to track her down and kill her, but along the way many of them become hostile towards him, leading Claude to become one of the most infamous criminals in Liberty City, with most gangs wanting him dead. Claude is a calm and serious man who appears almost emotionless regardless of the situation, aside from a slight smirk and usually a glare, seemingly taking everything in stride. Provided he is paid for his services, he will take orders from his bosses without reluctance or complaint, usually giving a nod to show that he understands and doesn't respond even when he is scolded or shouted at by his bosses for doing something wrong. He also prostrates to his bosses if required, in Kenji Keisen's case. Ironically, Catalina states that she betrayed Claude for his lack of ambition, and yet throughout the game, Claude works, kills, and rises through the ranks of the Liberty City underworld, all just to get his revenge. Because Claude never verbalizes it, it's unclear if he has any true loyalty or respect to anyone. As long as he is paid, and it will get him closer to getting revenge, he will work for, and kill, anyone, as evidenced by him killing Kenji Keisen. He even fights on multiple sides of gang wars, working for the Mafia, the Diablos, the Yakuza, and the Yardis, completely without hesitation, and goes as far as to orchestrate a gang war between the Yakuza and the Colombian cartel along with Donald Love. Claude is a tall Caucasian male in his late 20s to early 30s. He has a somewhat muscular build with brown hair and a faint 5 o'clock shadow. He always wears a black leather bomber jacket with bronze zippers with a black t-shirt underneath, green cargo pants and blue sneakers. During Give Me Liberty, Claude wears a baggy orange prison jumpsuit with rolled-up sleeves. In the PC version of GTA 3 there is an alternate outfit consisting of a brown leather jacket, blue jeans, white sneakers and a brown mustache. Aside from that, Claude is the only 3D-era protagonist, except for Mike, that wears the same clothes throughout the entire game. Tommy Vercetti is a character in the Grand Theft Auto series who appears as the protagonist of Grand Theft Auto: Vice City. Tommy is a former member of the Forelli crime family in Liberty City, who, after being released from prison following a 15-year-long sentence, is sent to Vice City to perform a major drug deal with the Vance brothers. However, when the deal goes awry and both the drugs and the money are lost, Tommy begins looking for the person responsible for ambushing the deal, working for various criminals of Vice City's underworld that might provide him with answers. Over time, he begins building his own criminal empire and eventually finds the man responsible for the ambush, killing him and taking over his business, thus becoming the leader of his own gang, the Vercetti crime family. He then works to make his gang the biggest crime empire in the city, eventually killing all his enemies and becoming the ultimate crime kingpin of Vice City. Tommy Vercetti is depicted as both intelligent and temperamental. He is easily angered and quick to resort to violence. He does not hesitate to kill, however, he often shows care and sensitivity towards characters like Mercedes Cortez and especially Ernest Kelly, viewing Kelly as a father figure due to his own father working in a print works, and showing anger and concern when Kelly is injured by Sonny's hitmen. Tommy prefers to perform his own work rather than delegate tasks to others. Even after he has his own gang and other subordinates working for him, he usually puts his plans in motion personally. He also personally gets involved if things aren't going as well as he'd like. For example, in the opening cutscene of Bar Brawl he is irritated by Lance's lazy attitude towards the bar refusing to pay protection money and immediately goes out to settle things himself. Despite his hot temper, Tommy tends to be loyal and trusting, especially toward those whom he feels helped him to achieve his goals. He went back to work for Sonny Forelli after being released from prison, even though he strongly suspected that Sonny set him up. Another example is Ken Rosenberg, who Tommy chose to let live following his drug problems because of his help with setting up Vercetti's empire. However, the best example is Lance Vance, as although Lance's competence was declining and his temperament was becoming negative, Tommy still viewed and attempted to treat Lance as an equal partner, even letting him in on the counterfeiting setup at the Vice City print works. When busting Lance's chops once over the phone, Tommy states he's doing so because Lance screwed up. If Tommy ever messed up, he considered it within Lance's full rights to take him to task on it. Tommy was shocked at Lance's betrayal, automatically assuming that Lance was selling out their entire organization, rather than himself personally. He notes over the phone that he really didn't think Lance was like that. Tommy Vercetti shows many characteristics in common with Tony Montana, a drug lord from the film Scarface. The two both end up in exile, both arrive in the city wearing Hawaiian shirts, both rise to power in Miami using great amounts of violence, both build an empire from a large estate and mansion, both have short tempers, and are prone to violence, both work as contract killers, and both killed their collaborators, and took their ex-bosses' empires. The interior of the Vercetti estate is even modeled after Montana's mansion, save for the lack of an indoor pool. There are, however, key differences, most notably that Tommy did not become addicted to his own narcotics, he even politely turns down alcohol offered during business meetings, and that Tommy survived the shootout in his mansion, as opposed to Montana who was killed, and Tony Montana is of Cuban descent, whereas Tommy Vercetti is of Italian descent. However, Al Pacino, who played the role of Montana in Scarface, is of Italian descent. Carl C.J. Johnson is a character in the Grand Theft Auto series, appearing as the protagonist of Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas. CJ is the second in command of the Los Santos-based street gang, the Grove Street Families, which is led by his older brother, Sean Sweet Johnson, and includes his childhood friends Lance Ryder Wilson and Melvin Big Smoke Harris. Having left his friends and family behind and moved to Liberty City for 5 years after the death of his younger brother Brian, CJ eventually returns home after learning about the murder of his mother. From there, he works to earn back the trust of his friends and family, restore Grove Street back to power, and learn the mysterious circumstances of his mother's death, only to later be betrayed by his friends and forced to flee Los Santos once again. While exiled, however, he makes numerous new friends and allies, becomes successful and wealthy through businesses and assets in both San Fierro and Las Venturas, and eventually returns to Los Santos to reunite with his family, exact revenge on those who wronged him, and reclaim the city for Grove Street. CJ is markedly different from the previous playable characters in the Grand Theft Auto series. While Claude and Tommy Vercetti are both depicted as completely heartless and feeling no regret for all of the people that they kill, CJ is depicted as having a considerably less violent personality, occasionally giving his targets a chance to redeem themselves. An example is his failed attempt at convincing Eddie Pulaski to see that he was no more than Tenpenny's pawn in the Mission High Noon. Furthermore, CJ displays genuine remorse for having to kill Ryder and Big Smoke, who he considered close friends. However, CJ has no problem with killing members of other gangs and willfully slaughters any that get in his way of reclaiming Grove Street family turf or try to sabotage his businesses, though in return, the gangsters are trying to kill CJ also. CJ's naive personality, face value interpretations of other characters' responses occasionally leads them to question CJ's intelligence. Despite his mostly calm nature, CJ has shown a very violent and aggressive side when his family is threatened, as with the Mission Deconstruction, where he vowed to teach a lesson to the construction workers who insulted his sister, Kendall, and proceeded to kill them all, including burying the foreman alive in a portable toilet. CJ, like his brother Sweet, holds a deep-seated loyalty towards Grove Street and the Hood, as seen in his reaction to the resentful attitude of his friends and siblings early on. Though, towards the end of the game, while Sweet was in prison and CJ was making progress in San Fierro and Las Venturas, the unattended Grove Street became Bella's turf and was filled with crack dealers. CJ tries to get his brother to abandon the Hood for their assets elsewhere, but he is quickly convinced into retaking the turf and rebuilding the Grove Street family. CJ can have a large variety of appearances depending on the player. For example, he can wear cheap clothes from Binco or luxury clothes from Zip. He can be muscular, thin or fat with the use of gyms and restaurants. He can also have different tattoos and hairstyles. Niko Bellic is the protagonist of Grand Theft Auto 4. He grew up in Yugoslavia, where he fought in the Yugoslav Wars. He later worked for organized crime syndicates as a hired gun in Liberty City. Ever since the Yugoslav Wars ended, Niko's main goal in life was to find and kill one of two men. Florian Kravic or Darko Brevic, for one of them betrayed and nearly killed him during the wars. Niko is the younger cousin of Roman Bellic and the son of Milica Bellic. He spent 7 months on the cargo ship Platypus, which eventually smuggled him into Liberty City. During the game, Niko says he moved to Liberty City because he wanted a new life by living the American dream, but when he does arrive in Liberty City, he has nothing except Roman. Niko parted ways with Hassan and the Platypus crew there, partly to reunite with his cousin, and partly to track down Florian Kravic, who had moved to Liberty City after the war. Roman had been boasting of great success in Liberty City, but in truth, his assets amounted to a small gritty taxi depot and a derelict apartment, and he was saddled with heavy debts due to his gambling habit. Niko would assist Roman in his taxi business and protect his cousin from the loan sharks who were harassing him. Roman's connections eventually led to Niko making friends with Little Jacob and taking work from the Russian mafia, setting in motion the events of the game. Niko is very protective of his family and loved ones, particularly his cousin Roman, whom Niko constantly has to worry about due to his gambling habit. Roman has an indiscreet nature of frequently getting the pair into trouble. He is withdrawn among strangers, but has good manners and shows a softer side with love interests like Kate McCreary and Michelle. That said, the horrors of war, both witnessed and perpetrated by Niko, have given him a great sense of guilt and an ambivalence about the value of human life. He warns away pursuers and expresses regret over his past violence, but also feels that killing is all that he can do, readily taking on jobs which necessarily involve murder. Niko is prone to violence after being angered, and he has an explosive temper when he is betrayed, manipulated, or his loyalty is questioned, but he is also quick to help the defenseless and unfortunate, even those he merely meets in passing. He apparently possesses a sense of idealism which was wounded by his wartime experiences. Unfortunately, such a split attitude leads to hypocrisy. Niko, for example, appears to genuinely sympathize with the McCreary's grief over the demise of one of their brothers, either Derek McCreary or Francis McCreary, despite having secretly committed that murder himself. This makes it highly possible that Niko is a pessimist. His bitterness at the murder of his friends during the war has consumed him, and he is unable to let it go, taking on several highly dangerous jobs, merely to enable his quest for vengeance. Several of his friends, most notably Roman, urge him to find a new reason to live, and there are many morality choices for Niko to emphasize his trait. Niko's business-like manner usually leads him to behave more maturely and cautiously than his acquaintances, although with acquaintances like Brucey Kibitz, Bernie Crane and Roman, this is no surprise. He has an apparent distaste for illegal drugs, much like Carl Johnson and Victor Vance. He frequently turns down Little Jacob's offers for marijuana and warns Packy about his cocaine habit. He also finds it distasteful to traffic in cocaine and particularly heroin, although this may be due to the heavy jail sentences they attract as much as any moral qualms. He is skeptical of American mainstream culture, which he sees as shallow and hypocritical, and has trouble relating to Roman's fascination with the country. However, he reasons that being in America is far better than back in Serbia, due to the country's instability and misery. Niko has brown hair and hazel eyes. He has facial hair that resembles a scruffy-looking 5 o'clock shadow, which fits his thug appearance very well. Niko isn't as heavily muscled and he's more slender. Still, Niko has enough physical strength to hold his own in a fistfight, and he's capable of pulling himself up on a ledge after hanging by his straight arms. He is also strong enough to twist Brucey's arm with ease. Several characters throughout the story call Niko Big Guy or Big Man, which likely means that he is of tall stature and/or heavy build. Niko has a scar running through his left brow. He most likely got the scar during the war, but this has not been confirmed. In Grand Theft Auto 5 are 3 protagonists, Michael DeSanta, Franklin Clinton and Trevor Phillips. Michael is a former bank robber and career criminal who faked his death to retire and live a peaceful life with his family in Los Santos. However, he suffers from his unhealthy relationship with them and soon gets pulled back into his criminal life, forcing him to return to his old ways. Michael's story centers around how his seemingly idyllic and halcyon lifestyle is brought to a halt as his past demons and morally compromising mistakes come back to haunt him. Meanwhile, his midlife crisis pushes him to his ultimate snapping point, and he becomes determined to achieve something more with his life, while also attempting to escape his past, become a free man, and start a new life with his family. Michael is an old friend of fellow protagonist Trevor, and, early on in the storyline, he also befriends Franklin and becomes a mentor figure to him. He is the husband of Amanda and the father of Jimmy and Tracy. Michael is a very muddled person, even confused by his good and evil personalities. He spends an uncommon amount of time in his head, where he can comfortably think or reminisce about certain things or aspects that give him a brief moment of nostalgia from his glory days. Nevertheless, it also constrains him into a world of wistfulness and bewilderment as he ponders the reason why things aren't going in the direction he planned it would. Michael has an obsession for materialistic appearance and images, making it the main reason for why he dreamt of living out his Vinewood dream with his family. Michael holds a deep-seated amount of self-hatred due to him wanting to live a life that's a falsehood, rather than coming to the conclusion that his troubling mistakes has garnished a great deal of misfortune upon himself, his family, and old friends and associates of his. His deal with the fib is a prime example. The self-hatred gives him an exceptionally short temper that he doesn't know how to control, which fills him with rage and causes him to not think at times. One example would be where he caught Amanda having an affair with her tennis coach, Kyle Chavez. He chases Kyle to a mansion and pulls it off a hillside, believing that it belonged to him. However, nearly everyone around Michael, except Franklin, including Chavez himself, knew that the mansion was too expensive for him to afford with his salary. Sarcasm is something that Michael firmly grasps because of the self-hatred, as he doesn't know how to respond to his family or friends properly at times without it. Michael is a Caucasian male, aged either 45 or 48, with grayish-black hair and light green eyes. Michael is of heavy build and is 6'2" tall and weighs 210 pounds. Trevor is a career criminal and former bank robber with a complicated past, who later founded his own company, Trevor Phillips Enterprises, operating with drug dealing and weapon smuggling in Blaine County. He is friends with Ron Jakowski and Wade Hebert, who work for his company, as well as the oldest and best friend of Michael, whom he believed to be dead for almost a decade after he faked his death to retire from the criminal life. Trevor is known to have a generally reckless and very aggressive behavior, but he is also very loyal and deeply respects all those close to him. Trevor's story focuses on how his actions have consequences on both himself and his friends, and him coming to terms with Michael's past actions. Trevor has been described as a difficult person to deal with, extreme, impetuous, vengeful, psychopathic, unhinged, unpredictable, untamed, infamous, homicidal, and prone to violent outbursts and destructive rampages. He does everything in a sociopathic and relentless manner, much different from Michael. Although Trevor is like this, he is honest about it and will never show hypocrisy. He has his own charm along with his own principles. However, Dan Houser has confirmed that Trevor may not be all he seems and is still too horrible to be a hero of any kind. He is also quite insecure about being born in Canada and takes offense to people mocking his accent. Almost all of his rampages are caused by Trevor flying into rage over being mocked over his Canadian accent. During a mission, Ron asks Trevor about his business dealings in Canada, resulting in Trevor getting defensive and demands for Ron to clarify. Ron hastily corrects himself by asking about Trevor's business dealings in North Yankton along the Canadian border, defusing a possible violent outburst from Trevor, thus showing his insecurity for being Canadian. Trevor's mere presence always puts others on edge due to his extremely short temper and unpredictable impulsive behavior. Ron, who is one of Trevor's friends, and an unlikely one at that, is constantly terrified of him and frequently tries to appease Trevor whenever he can, especially if he is close to getting angry. Michael is also wary of him when they reunite, stepping in front of his son to protect him. Despite Ron's fear and Trevor's psychopathic behavior, they do seem to show a level of trust to each other as Trevor usually tasks Ron to do a few missions for him, such as blowing up the lost MC fuel tank and helping him drop off cargo via plane, as well as running Trevor Phillips Enterprises in his absence. Wade, another friend, is equally scared of Trevor. Though Trevor torments and punches Wade often, this bullying extends to Wade's cousin, Floyd, as well. In the Merriweather heist, he gets angry quickly when his score is compromised. In the offshore ending, he gets so angry that he rams his face onto a wooden board and repeatedly smashes his face on it. His personality is stated to be partly based on that of legendary English prisoner Charles Bronson, also known as the most violent prisoner in Britain. He is a man known for his sudden violent outbursts which have earned him fame. Trevor is of athletic build and is 6'1" tall and weighs 206 pounds. He has brown eyes and receding dark brown hair. He also has several cuts on his face along with several tattoos, including one along his neck featuring a dotted line and the words "cut here," and a memorial tattoo for Michael on his shoulder, as well as a flying bird behind his ear, blazing skull on his left hand, and the words "fuck you" across his knuckles. Trevor has a visible scar on his abdomen from what looks to be a knife wound. Trevor also has numerous sores or boils over his lower stomach and back, likely from his drug addictions. Franklin was born and lived his entire life in Los Santos. He became a gangbanger at a young age and joined the families alongside his best friend Lamar Davis, committing various small crimes for a living. Franklin's story revolves his desire to become something more and make something of himself, which he succeeds when he meets Michael, who becomes a mentor figure to him and recruits him in all of his robberies and various jobs for other criminals, leading to Franklin's eventual success and wealth. Franklin also befriends the third protagonist, Trevor, who, although not as close to him as Michael, still becomes somewhat of a mentor for him. Franklin is described as ambitious, but perhaps to a fault, and very eager to take on new illegal challenges. He is also described as calm, smart, rational, and a logical way of showing a young man with a lot of hope, with Dan Houser claiming that this would be a nice contrast from Michael. He is also a person that, even though he's being mentored by Michael in crime, mentors Michael in life. This helps build up the father-son relationship between the two. Franklin is much calmer than both Michael, who has a very short temper, and Trevor, who is a violent psychopath. This calm personality is often displayed during missions, where he keeps it cool while fulfilling the task at hand, and when he is forced to act as the peacekeeper between Michael and Trevor when they get into an argument. Though Lamar drives him crazy at times, Franklin still cares for his best friend as he saves him from the Ballas with the help of Michael and Trevor during the events of Lamar Down. He is also the same toward Michael and Trevor, as he is seen helping them out with most of their problems, like when Amanda cheats on Michael and the latter chase Amanda's tennis coach during marriage counseling, and when he helps Trevor and Michael hunt down the remaining O'Neill brothers during Predator. Franklin has been described as fit and fashion conscious. He is 6'0" in height. He is mostly seen wearing a blue button-up shirt, a white long-sleeved t-shirt, dark blue jeans with white stripes, and a pair of wheat-colored boots.